Hello and welcome to Intimate Gaming Reviews. Today we're looking at A Plague Tale Innocence from French developer Asobo Studios and published by Focus Interactive, who were kind enough to provide us with the PS4 code for review. A Plague Tale follows the story of elder sister and younger brother team Amicia and Hugo de Rune.
It's me. Your sister, Amicia?
Hello.
We haven't seen each other much. Mummy will be back soon.
Move! Come on!
Amicia and Hugo make their way from the riches of their family home to the rags of war-torn, plague-infested 14th century France in search of safety and a cure for 5-year-old Hugo's mysterious illness. Whilst playing as Amicia, our job will be to help direct Hugo, along with occasional other allies that join you, to try and make your way to safety, whilst avoiding being stabbed to death by Inquisition soldiers or getting eaten by plague-infested rats. One thing that stands out immediately is how beautifully this game is presented. Whilst it might not always nail the AAA big budget animation, it's got a gorgeous palette and thoughtful details in the world, especially the character models, really help bring the game to life. Another thing that stands out very early on is the lighting in this game is amazing. You can really feel the difference between candlelight, flickering torchlight or sunlight in each area you visit. While this is part of what becomes an essential gameplay mechanic before long, it also stands out almost immediately in the game, long before the use of the light becomes apparent. Another strong thing within the game is the characters. They're quickly established as nuanced, flawed but likeable characters within the opening minutes of the game. It felt like you knew Amicia was a rough and tumble girl taking after her father, and also sensed that she's more distant from her mother, who at the start of the game devotes much of her time to searching for a cure for the younger brother's illness. You don't feel like the mother is wicked or mean, just that she's become preoccupied and her relationship with Amicia has suffered for it. For a game to be able to establish these subtle distinctions early on was fairly impressive, as there are few games from AAA developers that can manage this. The environmental storytelling is also masterful. Each location you'll travel to tells a subtle tale throughout the environment and incidental interactions. However, the interplay between protagonist Amicia and her younger brother Hugo is what really stands out as the most amazing. At 5 years old, Hugo doesn't really grasp the reality of what's happening and reacts as you would imagine a child would, throwing tantrums, asking questions and generally straddling the line between cute and annoying, and I mean that in a positive way. Amicia has an older head on young shoulders, but still struggles with feeling alone and scared whilst trying to mask that from her brother to keep him from being overwhelmed. Some of the most interesting moments early on come from when that facade breaks down and you see Amicia is a young girl that can't cope with the sudden responsibility that's been thrust upon her.
Will he shut me inside again? Like Mummy.
He'll get us to safety.
Alright. It's true.
Mechanically, the game controls well, but movement does feel a little stunted compared to other games in a similar genre. Many of the game's areas rely on a mixture of stealth and distraction tactics for bypassing soldiers, and the use of light and food to keep the rats at bay. While some of these puzzles do get telegraphed early on, the game does come up with inventive ways to use them and brings in fresh items, crafting abilities and ally skills to keep the puzzles fresh and varied. Amicia comes equipped with a sling that can be used to hurl rocks that can cause distracting noises or destroy chains and eventually to attack guards. When combat is introduced, it isn't gratuitous, it's a desperate act and your characters feel the weight of their actions.
Amicia. You killed him.
Puzzle-wise, the game is pretty straightforward in that you're mostly going to avoid soldiers using darkness and long grass, and you're going to try and avoid the rats by using either throwing food into distant corners or using some of that beautiful lighting to scare them away. The game does repeat these mechanics a little too often for my liking, sometimes even telegraphing the solutions to puzzles before the puzzle has even presented itself, but there are still occasions when less orthodox solutions arrive. One thing I would recommend is selecting the immersive option in the settings menu. This removes some of the HUD elements, which makes some of the puzzles slightly less obvious and encourages you to properly examine the area, rather than just following the indicators on screen. Overall, I think A Plague Tale Innocence has exceeded my expectations in its presentation, amazing lighting, characterisation and voice acting, and is only slightly let down by its partially predictable puzzle structure. Crafting is a nice touch, but doesn't really feel that significant, and isn't really fleshed out to the point of becoming pivotal in the game. Intermain Gaming awards this game an 8 out of 10.